Okay, so welcome everyone. This class will be focused primarily in the hips, and then I didn't mention, but you could grab anything you want to sit on. We have props over there on the side. So I've got a bolster and a blanket. If you like to have thick blocks, you can have those handy. And we'll begin in a meditation and then close in a meditation today. So you can get comfortable. I just want to let you know too that if you want to lie down for the meditation, you can. And you could sit cross-legged or you could kneel, whatever works for you. So I'll give you a moment to get settled in, and you can start by rolling your shoulders. And I just want to mention that everything in this class that I suggest is a suggestion. So this is your practice, it's your time for yourself. So you can add in pieces to the practice, you can take some away. And then let's work with the neck. So as you let your shoulders relax, drop your chin down towards your chest, and then roll your right ear over your right shoulder. It's gonna mute everyone here. Lovelies. There we go. And hang out there, breathing into the left side of your neck. If you want, you can take your left fingers out and reach them for the floor. And notice what that does. And you can also nod your head a little bit, yes, as your head drops to the side. Close your eyes if you like. You can nod no, nice and slow. Here's another one that I like, is to take your right hand to your left collarbone, so opposite side that your head is over onto, and then pull down on the skin around your left collarbone. And notice if you get a little more stretch into the fascia of your deep neck. You might nod a little yes and no there. Anytime you need to exhale out of your mouth, go for that. You can slowly let your left hand come down to your thigh and then slowly roll your head down to center and over to the left side. And just go as slow as you need to for your neck today. If you want, you can reach your right fingertips out to the side, so opposite side fingertips as the head rolls over onto. Sometimes I notice there's like a little pinch on one side, doesn't want to go over, and you can nod, make those little movements if you want to see if you can loosen things up in the neck. Yes is the nose. And take your time with this, because as we drop into a more restorative practice, it's maybe a little shift to slow down. If you're like me and you've had that cup of coffee, taking the time to slow down your breath maybe. And then you can also take your left hand to your right collarbone and pull down and notice what you feel there. Maybe continuing those yeses and nos. Last couple breaths here. And we'll let the right hand soften to the lap and then roll the head into the center. And either stay with your chin down or allow yourself to slump into your upper back and feel into that upper back area. And then let the chest lift a little and lift the head. And we'll just sit for a few moments. So you can close your eyes if you like here, or maybe keep them soft and open and downcast. And you might take your attention to your breathing. So we'll just notice the difference between awareness and regulation here. So bringing your attention to your breath, see if you can leave your breath alone without changing it. So notice, just kind of step back, notice how you're breathing. And that might be hard to do because simply bringing your attention to something might change it. But then let's work with a regulation tool. So let's start to slow and smooth the breath. And you could stick with that. You can always go back to stepping back and just noticing, because that is enough. See if you can relax the muscles of your face a little. And bring your attention to whatever thoughts are coming up. Last couple moments here, and just tell yourself the truth that you are not your thoughts, whatever they are. Nice. Okay, you can open your eyes here, and maybe you let your legs come out for a moment and roll out your ankles, maybe lean in. And we'll go for switching our cross of our legs. So take your left leg in front of your right, crossing at the shins. And you could stay up on your prop. And then let's slide our right hand out. So I'm not very good at mirroring, so do opposite of me. And then take your left arm up, and you can take it up, you can take it over your head, you can also hold your head. So you can choose any of those things. If you've got a tender neck, sometimes it's nice to hold your head. You can hold the back of your head or the top. You can also play with taking your hand up and flipping your fingers back and taking your hand behind you. So lots of options. We'll take 3 deep, long breaths here on this side. So 1, and maybe for some you tip down onto your elbow. You could check that out. You can bump up against some intense sensation and come out of it if you want. 2. And 3, and then use that top hand to help pull you all the way up. Nice. And then let's lean in. So lean in a little, take maybe your elbows to your knees, maybe your hands out onto the floor, and come forwards as much as you like there. And we'll take 3 breaths. 1, you might think about moving your pelvis back to the back of the mat, and moving your head forwards to the front of the mat, and seeing if your abdomen can get a little longer in your low back. 2. Maybe let your head go, let your chin tuck. 3. Heavy in your sit bones, roll up as you're ready. And we'll switch the cross of our legs, so you can widen out your legs and switch the cross. So this time we'll go right in front of left, right? So finding that place, and we'll go over to the left. So opposite of me, left hand down, right arm up. And remember those variations for yourself. So you can take your right arm over your head. You can hold your head. You can flip your fingers back and reach back and get some stretch through the front of the chest. You can tip onto your elbow if you want. You can even tip so far that your right hip comes off the floor. 2. So either notice your breath, or you can use some tools for regulation, maybe lengthening your breath. And regulation could also be deepening your breath. It's up to you. So 3, and then we'll use that top hand to help us come all the way up. Beautiful, and then walk in. So you could also walk your sit bones back so that you get that feeling of your bum going back behind you, your pelvis, and your head and chest going forwards, so that you're getting nice and long in the lower back. So let's take 3 breaths here. 1. Maybe even tuck your chin. 2, and 3, and then we'll slowly walk our hands back up. And then we'll come onto our abdomen, so you can slide your props a little back and come onto your abdomen and stack your hands out in front and place your forehead on your hands. You can also pick up one leg and reach it back behind you. Try to get a little longer through your hip flexor. And then the other one, pick it up, reach it back behind you. See if you can get some space in the front of the pelvis. And then for a moment, feel your abdomen breathing into the floor. Notice if you're feeling tension in the abdomen, and part of slowing down in restorative practices, it gives your digestion a little bit of space. So see if you can soften into your abdomen, where all your viscera are. Okay, then we'll prop ourselves up onto our elbows and come into a sphinx. So you can choose to have your elbows underneath your shoulders like this, or if that's too much on your low back, walk your elbows more forwards. So you can decide how much bend you want. For some of you, you can turn your hands out to the sides like seal flippers and press into your hands a little and even elevate your elbows. And then you could come into that intensity and out if you want. So if you want to come up a little higher, it's a little more bend in your low back, totally up to you. And we'll take 3 breaths here. So your choice, you could let your chin hang down and stretch into the traps, the back of the neck. Or if you are on a computer a lot, I would suggest trying to look forwards, and that gumball vertebra at the base of your neck, the C7, see if you can pull that into the front of your throat. Maybe even look a little bit up. So this is nice practice for your neck alignment. You can check out how it feels. It's totally fine to drop as well. So 2. And last breath here, think about pulling your hands towards you, like you're gripping the mat towards you, and see if you can get a little more arch into your upper back. And then we'll slowly come down. See if you can try to make your spine one size longer as you come down. So like pull your spine long, take your head back onto your stacked hands. Take a breath there. See if you can relax a little more through your abdomen. And then hands by your low ribs, and we'll come up and back to a child's form. So this is where your hips come back towards your heels. For those of you who have a hard time bending your knees all that way, you can always put your bolster in between your ankles and your heels. Or your hips can even be higher than that. So shift back, get a little length through the low back, closing the front of the hips. Giving your weight in a little bit to gravity, whatever that means to you, surrender a little more. And then we're gonna come forwards onto our abdomen again, just for a moment, and then roll over onto our right side and hold our temple in our hand. So that's an option. You could also outstretch your arm completely and let your head rest on your bicep. And you can just take a look at me for a moment. So these are the 2 movements that we're gonna do, and then we'll do them together. So the first one is to take your left knee in towards your armpit, or take that leg up and hold onto it. You could hold onto the toe, the calf, or the hamstring. Second movement is to take your bottom leg forwards, and then we're gonna roll into a sphinx like this, which will be an beautiful IT band stretch. So let's go for the first one. And if you're having a hard time balancing, so there's 2 ways of doing this. You can line your heels up with your head and your elbow and make it core intensive, or you can bend your knees a little so you're like in a fetal position and make it softer. And then we'll take the left knee, top knee, in towards the armpit and just give it a nice squish into your armpit. And if you like, totally up to you, you can kick that leg up, hold on to the back of your hamstring, your calf, ankle, or maybe with your peace fingers, grab your big toe. Whichever variation you can play with, if your leg is up, play with taking your leg a little behind you and see what that does to your adductor, the inner thigh. Or you can move it forwards. Let's take 3 breaths. 1, and breathe at your own pace. Do you want to simply notice how you're breathing? That's enough. Or does it feel good to slow down the breath? Last breath here. And we'll let that top leg float down. And then we're going to take our bottom leg, so our right leg, and scissor it forward. So you come towards somewhat of a 90 degree. If you're feeling pretty sticky in your outer right leg, you might want to bend that leg a little. I would also encourage you to try to push out through both of your feet. So your legs are a little active, and then roll yourself back into your Sphinx. Yeah. And now, if it's a lot to be up on your elbows, you can stack your hands and come down. So you've got your Sphinx options. Your elbows can be close. They can be further away. You could press into your hands and come up if you like. And we'll take 3 breaths. So it's totally up to you. If you're not feeling enough stretch for you in your lateral line of your right leg, you can move that leg up more. So I like to push out through both of the feet here. And think about the pelvis being dragged to the back of the mat. And then with your hands and your elbows, it's like you're crawling your spine forwards. And see how much length you can get there out of your low back. 2. And 3. And then we're going to slowly come on out of this so you can roll out. Take your right leg to meet your left. Roll onto your abdomen. And then we'll roll over onto the other side and do those 2 shapes. So I'm just going to show you by flipping myself. We'll go over onto the left side, holding the head or outstretching the arm. Choosing either the more core variation with the legs in line with the head and elbow, or a little bend to make it softer. And then right knee comes in towards your armpit, pull it in. And then you can start to outstretch that leg and explore that. You'll notice there might be a little tip, a little tippiness, especially if you work with taking your leg a little behind you, but actually take your buttocks forwards in space. 2. And 3, and then we'll slowly let that top leg come on down. And we'll take that bottom leg, so the left leg, kick it forwards towards a 90 degree, maybe more, maybe less, maybe bent. And then roll towards your Sphinx. So you might notice there's a big difference on one side to the other. You might want to stack your hands and drop down. You might want to come up a little higher up. Change the position of your bottom leg if you want. So 1. And then I like to think someone's got their hand on my pelvis and it's pulling me to the back of the mat. And then with my elbows, I'm going to drag my spine forwards. If you know anything about the psoas, this is a nice one for that. 2, one of the deeper hip flexor muscles that attach your spine to your thigh. Kick out through both your feet, last breath. And then roll back over onto your abdomen. And you can stack your hands and take a couple of breaths. Okay, we're gonna come up into one more Sphinx. So come on up, and I'm gonna invite you this time, if you like, you can try widening your feet as wide as the mat and see how it would feel to roll your inner feet more towards the floor. So almost your inner knees and inner feet come towards the floor. So for some folks, this can be really nice in the low back. Gives you maybe a little more low back bend, and you can test it out. You might even come up a little bit or stay low or walk forwards for 1. 2, remember that drag forwards with your elbows, so it's like you're pulling the mat towards you. It's like your little assist for yourself to try to get more low back length and more upper back extension. And then we'll come on down from that, and you can unhook your inner legs from the floor and maybe wobble into your hips a little. You're welcome to also bend your knees so your shins are floating, and then windshield wiper your feet side to side. So just feel a swish side to side with your feet. Okay, let's put our hands by the low ribs, come up onto the knees, and then back into your child's shape. So it could be the bolster in between your feet and your thighs. You could outstretch your arms in front, maybe wiggle your fingertips forwards, like grip the mat and walk your fingertips more forward so you can feel a little more elongation in your arms. And we'll come on up onto our hands and our knees. So if you're choosing to have blocks, sometimes it's nice to have those blocks underneath your fingers, or if you can, come up onto your fingertips for this. And then take your right foot forwards to the outside of your right hand. Okay, so we're gonna stay here for a minute. So if you want to blanket your left knee, sometimes that's nice if your knee doesn't love the hard floor. And then you can let your hips move back a bit and then sink them in. So you can move them back a bit and sink them in. And your right leg, you're welcome to let it turn out. Let the knee turn out, let the foot turn out. See how that feels? And you can shift a little side to side. Sometimes if you get caught up on your back knee, it helps to lift your back knee and try to land on the top of the kneecap instead of the middle or the bottom. So see if you can land the top of the kneecap, and that for me gives me a bit more of a stretch and also a better landing place on the kneecap. So you can check it out, see how it works for you. And then you can test this out. So maybe you just test out taking your left elbow to the ground and then coming back up. And then take your right elbow to the ground and then come back up. And maybe if you know that that's okay, you can put both elbows on the ground. If you have blocks, you could also put your elbows on blocks. Let's take our 3 breaths here. And if this is super intense for you, know that you can always come out and land on your abdomen or a child's form. I don't need to give you permission to come out of the shape. So just give yourself that liberty. You don't have to hang out in a place that's too intense for you right now. So 2. And last breath, 3 here. Exhale it all out. And then we're gonna walk our hands a bit back and take our right leg. So you might wanna come up on your fingertips for this. Take the right leg and aim the knee for the right side of your mat. So you're coming into pigeon. And I wanna give you 2 options for this one. So if it feels great for your knee to start to sink in, and your hips don't need to be on the floor. So if that's good place for you, you can do that. Or if you want, you can actually turn right onto your back and take your right ankle in front of your left knee and do a figure 4. For some people, that's just a bit nicer. So we'll take our time there, and I want to give you one more option for some. If you like, you can take a twist here. So it's your right knee forwards, and it'll be your right arm underneath your left armpit, palm facing up, to take your right temple to the floor. And we'll hang there for 1, 2, and last breath 3. So if you're in that twist, you might want to slowly start to come up and out. Okay, so this is a bit of a tricky transition. We're going to tuck the back toes under, bring the right knee a little forward. So it's like you're taking the right knee from the right side to the left side of your mat and turn open into a seated position. And it's like a wide leg, yeah, just like that. So your left leg is out to the side, your right knee is out to the side, and this leg is externally rotated. Okay, perfect, everyone got it. So we'll take a side stretch over the left side. And this is just like your side stretch before. So your left hand can slide down that straight left leg, and your right hand can come up. It can grab your head. It can pull back behind you. And if you've got some shoulder mischief going on, you can also take your right hand to your thigh and push into your thigh, encouraging a little bit more, perhaps opening in the right side of the low back. And let's be there for a few breaths. If your neck is tired too, you're always welcome to tuck your chin and look down and even roll your sternum down. So for some folks, that might feel great. Or if you're looking for that more intense stretch, you can take your bottom lung towards the ceiling and really open your gaze up towards the ceiling. So 2. And 3, and then we'll let the top arm relax a bit down and then slowly come up. And now we're going to turn. I know you're going to turn away from me, but we're turning towards that left leg and turning your right knee so you are, your hips point towards that left back leg. And then we'll fold forwards over that. So you can fold in and breathe into that left hamstring. So again, up to you how far forwards you go. And for some folks, it might be nice to take the blanket underneath your hips if you're feeling like there's a bit too much strain on your low back. Maybe you let your head go and tuck your chin and see how that feels to sort of hang your skull from those big muscles at the back of your neck. How would it feel to push your legs down into the ground right now? Okay, let's push those legs down into the ground a little more and roll on up. Okay, now you can look towards me again. We're gonna bend the left leg so that the knees, it's like the feet just stack one on top of the other and the knees stagger, and you turn back towards the front of your mat. And then we'll twist. So your left hand on top of your right knee, and then you can twist. Look over your right shoulder. It's okay if your left hip is off the floor. If you want to try, you could try to take it down to the floor if you move your feet a little bit. It's just another way of doing it. Or you could really lift that left hip off the floor and let it drive you into the twist. Okay, so I just want to check if everyone has a bolster in here. Here's a nice thing you can do with this. So I'm going to take my bolster. I know you might be disoriented here, but we're going to end up off the mat. So I'm going to take my bolster like where my spine's going to go and then lie back down onto it like that. So you kind of be perpendicular to your mat. And your feet can stay staggered like that. Yeah, Patty, you're going to want a bolster for this. It's really nice. And then you can lie back. And it's kind of like a sneaky hero's shape, but maybe a little nicer for your knees, right? Yeah. And what I like to do here is explore reaching, especially that elevated knee, reach that away from you, like you're trying to encourage that femur bone, your thigh bone, to decompress from the pelvis. And then I also like to play with thinking about lifting my pelvis a little bit up towards the ceiling. And you might do that by engaging your glutes, your buttocks muscles, and see if you can get a little more lift out of that, especially your elevated hip. You could also take your arms over your head and kind of interlock your forearms or your elbows. And let's take 3 breaths there. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we're going to slowly come on out of this. So you might put your hands down and push yourself up with your hands. And then turn to the front of your mat and pick up your legs so you come into a quadruped position. Okay, before we do that whole sequence on the other side, from your quadruped position, slide your right hand under your left armpit, palm facing up. This time your hips are a little more elevated, and you can push into your left hand. Your left hand might be sort of spider fingers in front of your face, and push into it to roll into the twist a little more. If you can imagine where a ponytail would go on the back of your head, maybe kind of roll towards the back of your head, and just go as far as it feels useful for you to get into that twist. 2. Can you imagine that your hips are getting pulled to the back of your mat? Nice traction for your lower spine. And then we'll roll on out of that. Bless you. And come up onto your all fours. And let's do a cat curl. So arch your spine, cow, and then round your spine, cat. Push into your hands. Get into all those nooks and crannies that might need a nice rounding. And then come to neutral and slide your left hand under your right armpit. Let your left thimble come down to the ground. You can spider finger your right hand and push into it as much as feels useful. Just start to roll onto the back of your skull. Maybe your hips want to go to the left or right. How would it feel to push your hips straight back to the back of your mat? 2. And 3, unwind from that. Come on up and arch your spine nice and slow. Get long there and then press into your hands and round your spine. Tuck your pelvis under. And come to neutral there. Let's tuck our toes and just a little bit of core activation. So with the toes tucked, press into your hands and lift your knees about 1 inch off the ground and hold there. Notice what's happening in the deeper part of your abdomen. Shoot your head forwards and your pelvis back, and then slow lower of the knees. Okay, so other side, come up onto your fingertips. Let's take our left foot to the outside of our left hand. And my knee loves a blanket. You don't have to do that, but you can if you want. Untuck your back toes. And then little movements forwards and back, just to acclimatize to this stretch, or maybe a little side to side. You can also turn your left toes out, your left knee out, and see how that feels. For some bodies, that feels like a more spacious place in the pelvis. And then here, let's check out taking the right elbow, tap the floor, come on up. Left elbow, that's the harder one usually, tap the floor, come on up. Maybe both. Come down to the floor, or if you've got a block, sometimes you can put your elbows on a block. You don't need to come that low. So you could stay high. If your wrists bug you, you could come onto your fists. If you want to stay up and you want to work with the wrists a little bit, you could even flip your fingers towards your pelvis. So yeah, climbers love this one. Texters love this one. And you can get into some of that thick forearm tissue as well. Remember, you don't need permission to come out if you want to come out, but the invitation will be to stay here for 3 long breaths. So do you want to notice your breaths, or do you want to regulate in your own way? That could mean deepening your breath, making a sound to it. That could mean slowing down your breaths a lot. It's one of the quickest ways to access your nervous system is through your breath. So I don't know about you, but in the heat, it was harder for me to sleep, and I noticed that my nervous system was like a little bit on high alert because of not sleeping as much. So I was practicing a lot this week, long, smooth, slow exhales. Last breath here. Okay, so if you're working with your wrists, you can work your hands back forwards, pull those hips back a bit, and then take your front leg into pigeon. So this is where the knee is going out to the left side of your mat. I like to point my foot. You can check out how it feels to flex, but I like to point. And you can also work with the angle of your shin. It could be close, heel could be close into your pelvis. You could also work with it more in a 90 degree. And also, as I mentioned, you could roll onto your back. And I just want to show you that. So if this doesn't work for your knee, left ankle in front of the right knee, draw it in like that, figure 4. Okay. So for some, if you like, we can work with that twist where we'll take our left arm under and turn ourselves to look right. You could actually play with the twist on both sides. Come up and do a little on one, a little on the other. One more breath here. Okay, so 3 will slowly come up. So this transition, I'm just going to show you being on this side of my mat because we'll come up a bit and then we're going to roll onto the left hip and open up into that wide-legged forward fold with the left leg in external rotation. So now we're doing our side bend over the long right leg. And if you want, you can take that blanket and put it under your hips, and then slide over your right leg and choose your arm position for you. So your arm could actually stay down on your left thigh and push into your left thigh, a little, or take it up and back or over. And you don't need to marry one thing here. You could explore a few different options. Open up and turn your sternum down towards the floor. 1. 2. 3. And we'll slowly let that left arm come down and soften if it's up, and come on up. So now we're going to turn towards that right leg and turn the pelvis so it's a little more squared towards the right leg. You could also take the blanket underneath your hips there and then start to slide forwards into a forward fold. And breathe into the right hamstring. So how would it feel here to push your legs into the floor a little? And we'll slowly ground through the sit bones and maybe push the legs down to help you come all the way up. And then we're going to do that staggered knee thing. So the right leg bends and the knees are staggered, the right hip is off, and we're kind of turning to the front of the mat again. You can adjust your pelvis, you can sit up on something. It's okay if your right hip is off. And then right hand comes across to the left knee. So you're turning into a twist, maybe even looking over your left shoulder. And you can let the right hip move forward, see how that encourages your twist. Or sometimes I like to try to get the right hip on the ground. So there's really no right answer to all of these shapes. It's more of an exploration. 2, let's see how it feels to lean back a bit and then twist the spine. Let the abdomen twist, and if you're somebody who notices that you carry tension in your organ body or your viscera, see if you can relax down into your belly and then see if you can get a little more twist. The rumor is that twisting is good for your digestion. And then we'll come forwards out of that, and then we'll remember that lie back, right? So you can do that or not. You can stay upright, stay in the twist, or take your bolster and lie back onto it. Your right hip can be a little elevated. You can take your arms over your head. Sometimes I like to interlock my hands and hook the top of the bolster with my interlocked hands and pull on it. Pull on the top of the bolster with my interlocked hands, and that gives me a bit more space and length. For some, I just want to name that it could be a big stretch for the top of your ankle. You could even flex your foot like that and have it a little bit more on its side. I like that stretch to the top of my ankle, so that intensity is welcome, but it's up to you. And then how would it feel to think about decompressing your right thigh bone out of your pelvis? So like reach it away from your pelvis. And what do you feel when you do that? How does that feel for your knee and the hip flexor? And then how would it feel to elevate your whole pelvis up by using the powerful backside muscles, so the glutes? Maybe that you're getting into a place there that's welcome. I like to think about going into pleasurable intensity and hanging out there for a few moments. So 1, 2. If it's a little pleasurable, then maybe there's some dopamine happening, and that's one of your greatest painkillers. So go for the feelings that feel good and intense. Beautiful, last breath there. And then we'll use our hands, however you like, to push you back up. And we'll turn towards the front of the mat. Okay, front of the mat. And we'll come back into that twist. So I want to give you a bit of a different option for the twist. You can take your right arm under. Now, this different option is a little more intense. So this one you can watch first and then do if you like. So you'd bend your bottom arm, make a fist, place your top hand on top of that and push down, and then let that help you move into the twist. If that's too intense, take it with your the previous way we did it. But you can explore that if you like and see if that helps you. Maybe access some more twist in the upper back, which for many of us is a little more rigid. It's okay if your breath is a little sharper and shorter in this one. You can bump up into that intensity, and then as you come out, deepen your breath. So one more breath on this side. You can even exhale out of your mouth if that's supportive. And then slowly come out of that. Use your hands to support you to come back up. Nice. Okay, let's before we go into the other side, let the hips rock side to side. Maybe even tap the ground. And let's go on to the other side twist. So it's our left arm under, and you can choose to take the variation of having your right hand spider finger and press, or bending your left arm, making a fist with that, placing your right hand on top of it, and using some pressure from your top arm into your bottom arm to help you find a little more twist. If your breath is a little shorter and sharper in this one, that's okay. You can smooth it out when you get out of the shape. And then we'll use our hands to push us back up onto all fours. And let's go into that hip drop to one side and then the other. Okay, we'll come up to the center. Swing your shins to one side, sit down, and bring your legs forwards. So with your legs forwards, you could turn onto the side of your mat. We're going to widen out through the legs. And it's up to you how wide do you want to go through your legs. You can also sit up on something to support you if you feel like you're really rounding back. It's okay to round back a bit too. So everyone's body is different. And then we'll either bring the hands behind you to support that, and that could be a place where you stay, or you can bring your hands a little forwards. And then I'll give you the option for some movement here. So if you want to slide over one side and come into your side bend, you can do that. Maybe your opposite hip came off the ground, and if it did, that's fine. Can you drop it back down to the ground, maybe by pushing into your bottom hand? We'll use that inhale to bring us up and over to the other side. This side, over to the other side. And it's okay if your opposite hip came off. You might encourage it to drop down and just notice what that does into your low back. Sometimes it's useful to ask yourself, like, am I going too far into this that I might be sore or regret that movement tomorrow? But adding load to the tissue makes the tissue stronger. So you can add a little fearlessness into your practice and go into some intense sensation, and that's okay. Just ask yourself if it's the just right place for you. And then we'll come on up, and then we can walk in any amount. So if you're like me and you've been a little hypermobile in your life, which means you're a little overly flexible sometimes, this is something that I like to try, and you can try this. So I would put my hands behind the back of my head and push my legs down into the ground, and then work with coming in and out a little bit. So this is really useful for folks that are very flexible, to add some strength in. If that's not you, someone's like, that's not me, then you can melt into it more, right? So everyone's different. You know if you're hypermobile. It's when you go deep into a stretch and you don't even feel it, right? One of my teachers said you're closer to enlightenment if you are really stiff, because you're always feeling the present moment when you go into the shape, right? So it's tough being hypermobile. You often go in and you're like, what am I supposed to feel? Where am I supposed to feel it? So many different bodies. And even if you're not hypermobile, working with strength in stretching can actually give you more mobility. So just something to think about. You could even take your hands behind your back and give yourself a nice open through the chest and work with that pressure, almost like you want to push your heels so far down into the ground that your hips lift off. Okay, so a couple more moments exploring whatever it is you're exploring, maybe melting through the center. And then we'll slowly come on back up. Okay, so our last thing here, if you want to do a little counter pose, take your hands back behind you, boost your chest up, look up, and then come back to center. And let's pick up underneath our knees and bring our feet together in front of us. Okay, so you might want to be up on something for this, and it's up to you to bring your legs in closer or have them further away. So I feel like when they're further away, I get more IT band pull, right? And then when they're closer in, I get more adductor pull, so in the inner thighs, so you can explore that for yourself. Let's begin by coming upright and flapping the knees. This is kids yoga for adults. This is what we always do in kids yoga. And just getting some, this is strengthening and releasing, and see if you can. We'll notice a bit of a difference here. Okay, so do that, and then pause and tip your pelvis forwards and come on in. And just notice where you get. Could be a little, could be a lot. Maybe tuck your chin and release through your upper body. And then come on up, and we'll do that again. So a little butterfly flaps through the legs. Now let's lean over to the right side. So take your right hand, lean into it, fall into it. Put your left hand on your left knee and push your knee into your hand. So push your hand into your knee, push your knee into your hand. Push, push, push. Strong for one, so you can feel it around your hip. Feel your hip engaging, all the muscles around your hip. And then release your knee and go over to the other side. So you're gonna fall into the left hand, push, and I really wanna push up, so I feel right around my hip joint, a lot of work. Push for 1, 2, 3, release that. Go back to a couple of up and down flaps. And then we're gonna come in, so. Come in, see where you get. Do you come a little bit further? And a little bit more comfortable, perhaps. Or maybe not. There's never a rule. All right, Let's come on up out of that. Bring your knees together with the use of your hands. And if you like, curl through the center. And roll on up. And we'll go into our pranayama practice. So you might want to put an extra layer on. And this is the shape that I'm going to suggest. So for those of you at home that don't have a bolster, just roll up a big blanket. And then I like to have an extra blanket. I'll show you what I do with that. Put that for my head. So, oh, that's a sticky mat. So then your situation is a little bit uplifted through your chest, and your head has a bit of support, and your arms can open to the sides. Perfect. So position for your legs up to you. Because I have a bendy spine, it feels good for me to have my feet planted. It just feels more supported for me. But you might be one of those people who like to open up your knees and take your feet together, or outstretch your legs completely. So you can check out all those different options. And then we'll work with a little bit of breath and a short meditation in this position. Yes, you can meditate lying down. What a relief. All right, so if you want to close your eyes, go for that, and then take a deep breath in and exhale all your breath out. Then inhale half of your breath in and pause. Then inhale all the way to the top of your breath and pause at the very top of your breath, so full in your lungs up to your collarbones. And then exhale all your breath out. Then take a free breath in and out. Find the bottom of your breath. And inhale a third of your breath and pause. Inhale another third and pause. Inhale all the way to the top of the breath. Fill up the top of the lungs to the collarbones. Pause there. And then exhale all your breath. Take a free breath in and out. And then inhale a third of your breath and pause. Inhale another third and pause. Inhale to the top, get nice and full. Pause there. Exhale. Okay, this time, inhale all the way to the top of the breath in one big breath. And then exhale a third of your breath and pause. Exhale all of your breath out. Inhale and exhale free breath on your own time. Then when you're ready, inhale all the way to the top of the breath. Exhale a third of your breath and pause. Exhale another third and pause. Exhale all your breath out. Breathe in and out free. Last one. Breathe all the way to the top of the breath. Exhale a third and pause. Another third. Exhale all your breath out. And then breathe natural. And see if you can step back from your breathing and witness your breathing just as it is. What does your breath want to do without you manipulating it in any way? And then if you want, you can slowly work with your breath in a way that's feels regulating for you. So would that be deepening the breath maybe? Or staying with noticing it as it is? Or slowing it down and making it smoother? You have a really powerful tool to affect your mood and your decision making by bringing your attention to your breath. You have the ability to work with your breath in a way that slows down your reaction time and gives you an opportunity to make the appropriate response. Okay, so either you want to stay here on your upright spine position like this, or you can switch to a counter pose, which would be to roll over to the side and take your bolster under your thighs. And I would, for me, I would take it under my thighs and then take the blanket under my head. So now I'm not in a back bend, I'm in like the tiniest bit of forward fold in my hips. Or you could stay, if you're loving where you are, you can stay there. But if your back is wanting to go into this shape, go into this one. There's a little bit of a counter pose for that back bend. And then we'll have our last few minutes together here. We'll take 4 minutes of full release into silence, release into gravity. Maybe a little bit of surrender, maybe a little bit of merging with the floor. This is a place where I like to acknowledge the land I'm on right now. I acknowledge that I celebrate and honor and live on this land, First Nations territory of the Blackfoot, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda. So especially if you're at home, you might want to take some more time here and rest a little longer. If you're ready to move into your day, you can rotate your wrists and your ankles and stretch your arms over your head. Give yourself a nice long stretch. And if you've been in that back bend for a while, you might want to come out of it and lie with your back on the ground for a couple moments just to feel that counter pose and that restfulness of your upper spine. And take your time to come up to a seat however you do. Draw your knees in, roll to the side. And it's nice to close the class with putting the hands together if it's a gesture that's meaningful for you, or having your hands in your lap. And I like to think about the Om Shanti 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 at the end of the practice, and which kind of means, may I have peace, may you have peace, may we have peace. Thank you so much for being here. Namaste.